The very first thing I need to do is get some dimensions. At this point I'm getting a length and deciding exactly where I want to end the back of that main sole. That back section is going to be underneath fuel tank, deck, battery compartments, etc. And the very end is going to still remain open in there to provide access to pumps for the bilge and for the live well. Possibly any other pumps I might put in there. Here I'm getting my dimension at the very back end of the sole. This is kind of an important dimension because it tapers forward at a fairly straight taper for quite a ways. It'll sure be nice to get a sole in here when it's not so awkward to get around inside the boat for setting stuff up. This may be the hardest part of the whole job, is just getting this sole in here and having repaired the structure underneath in the last video. I was just making a mark there to note which rib I was going to be dimensioning. What I'm doing is I'm taking the width of the rib and then the front dimension and the back dimension of each rib from the very front of where the sole is going to set down in there. I'm getting the dimension at the front. I'm going to make it a little narrower than the boat at that level because I don't want the sole rubbing against the hull because it's an aluminum boat and it's going to flex. I don't want parts rubbing against each other that aren't secured to each other. The sole's just going to be secured to the stiffeners on the top of those ribs. Here we go, just getting some more dimensions. It was kind of tedious getting all of this, and the first 3 or 4 are really important because you can see with the curve of the hull the length, or rather the width, changes rather substantially, but from here on back there isn't so much of a curve to it, it's just a straight taper. So I just need that dimension and the dimension at the back, and I can draw a line between them when I go to cut out the piece. And now that awkwardness getting around the boat so I can get out again. I use this trailer as a cutting platform for large pieces of sheet. For things like aluminum, I just barely cut through it and it just barely scores the surface of the wood. Of course, this flatbed trailer used to be a boat trailer, so it's kind of going old circle because... Old circle? Ha! Full circle, because now it's being used to make another boat. Well, to help make another boat. That piece of aluminum diamond plate there hasn't been as useful as I thought it would be, but this will do the trick for us. Yes, it was just as loud as it sounds when I was moving that piece around. It'd been a couple of days since I'd taken my dimensions, so I had to stand there and look at it for a minute to remember what I was looking at. I was trying to figure out the best way to mark it out, and in the end I decided to just mark it from the center. That's what I'm doing now, is marking centers. And then I'll take each dimension from the center line and cut an equal amount off of each side, more or less. I don't know what all that noise is. Maybe it was a little windy that day. I don't remember it being windy, but who knows. Alrighty. Wait a minute, am I doing the same thing again? Did I accidentally edit in? No, I'm doing something else. Oh, okay, that's what it was. I was getting the dimensions for that last cut at the end of the sheet. I was afraid I'd stuck the same video in twice. The Sharpie marker was okay to start with. I got a little bit of it marked out. Yeah, 3 of them died on me in that project. I switched over to a different type of marker. That's just a piece of steel tube stock being used as a rough straight edge. Those xylene paint markers are wonderful. It takes a while for the paint to cure, but they seem to hold up really well, and the paint lasts a long time on the stuff it's marked on. Yes, it's okay to cut aluminum with a circular saw or a lot of wood saws with carbide teeth, as long as you take some care. You want to make sure it doesn't kick back or any of the other things that you're supposed to do when you're cutting wood with a saw too, and a lot of people aren't as conscientious about as they should be. Right now I'm just setting it just a little bit deeper than the thickness of the aluminum. So it should just cut through and not even score most of that wood underneath, or just barely score it. Don't worry about my trailer. I've cut a lot of sheet goods this way on this. Now when I'm doing something like plywood where I want to cut all the way through and be sure I'm cutting all the way through, I'll use a piece of styrofoam underneath it and I'll cut into the styrofoam. This is something I got in the habit of doing when I was contracting, because it always seemed like I was pulling on the cord and my tool was coming apart, or the tool was coming apart. The cords were coming apart, so that just simple overhand knot gives it some shock absorption. WD-40 makes a fair cutting lubricant for aluminum. I don't know that I use it on anything else, and I don't even really like to use it on aluminum, but it's got that spray nozzle, so it makes it real easy to put it exactly where I want it down a long stretch of aluminum. Ah, it looks like I got some information tags in the wrong spot. Oh well. The rest of this is just continuing to cut along. One side cut down. Where you saw me going back and forth there, I was kind of walking the saw around that curve. Probably would have been safer to just cut in a straight line and then come back and pick up the curve again, but it worked. Always unplug it before you start screwing with the blades. I like my fingers. I really like them to stay attached to my hand. What I'm doing there is inspecting all the teeth to see if I got any chip welding. You get aluminum hot when you're cutting it, and it'll stick to carbide tools, which is why most machinists recommend you cut aluminum with coolant. Wearing gloves while using spinny tools is always a mixed risk. If that glove gets caught up in a spinning tool, it can draw your hand into it. But the ragged edges of that aluminum right now are very sharp, and they would cut my hands. It'd be very difficult to handle the metal without getting cut. That's why I brought the flap disc out on the angle grinder. More of the same, just getting that ragged burr off so it's safe to handle that sheet of aluminum. Sorry I didn't do a nice transition with the camera there. That was painful to watch. One of the reasons... Oh, yeah, we're marking up the location of the ribs on the, I guess, the bulkhead, the sides of the hull there, so that I can tell where they are once the sole's laid in place. That way, hopefully, I won't drill too many holes that miss. Yeah, and I'm using that paint marker, which means I'll probably have to use acetone or something like that to remove it. Or maybe I'll just leave the marks there and have people ask questions. What are those marks for? To make you ask questions. I'm trying to avoid having any loose metal chips or particles or whatnot down in the hull of the boat. That's why I'm sweeping everything off right now. Just leave all that out on the parking pad where I can sweep it up later. There's a reason that I'm turning it around. You'll see in a minute. This was really awkward, but it wasn't as difficult as it looks like. I was just trying to be all gentle and gingerly with it, and honestly, when I just grabbed a hold of it and went for it, it was pretty easy to drop this in. Well, to pull it up onto the boat. Like I said, I'm making it look harder than it needed. I'm making it harder than it needed to be. I guess the main thing is I didn't want to bend or kink that sheet. Hey, that's as good an excuse as any, right? I'm setting four corners, setting 4 screws in the corners so the sheet doesn't move, because I'm going to drill all the holes for all of the rivets. A drill point screw, just didn't want to drill through that second piece of aluminum underneath. And now that sheet's secure. And it's time to drill a gazillion holes. Up there in the front, there's actually 3 pieces that are going to tie together. If you watched the last video, you might remember that I struggled to get all of that straight up there and get everything lined up. That was part of, or preparing for part of what I'm doing now, which is drilling holes for rivets that will go through all 3 pieces. It'll make that front end structurally very strong. Well, I hope it will anyway. I'm going to say it does because it'll make me sound smart. I'm not going to make you watch me drill all these holes, just most of them. Beverage break. That's just to pick up all of the drill shavings or drill chips that are on top of the sole. Although I imagine most of them probably fell down through underneath. Now lifting it out of the way. Here, this was actually more awkward than putting it in the boat. More difficult? Well, maybe not. I wanted to lift it up and get all of those shavings out from drilling all of those holes. And any other dirt that had gotten in there since I cleaned it out the last time. There'd been a little bit of time in between when I pulled all of the old flotation foam out and started working on this again. There was a bit of dirt stuck in place, and the brush just helped knock it all down so I could vacuum out the rest of it. You'll be proud of me, I'm recycling all of the decent sized blocks of foam that I figured I could put back in. Did I say I'll be glad when that sole's installed and it won't be so awkward to move around in that boat? I'm sure I must have mentioned it by now. I don't know what the buzz was being picked up by that camera. Sorry about that. Might be the air dryer for my air system in the back. I'll do some experiments to find out, but you guys will probably just have to live with it, because I'm usually doing work like this at the same time that I'm running machines, and I need dry air going to my machines. Got some new flotation foam. Instructions are about the same as the old stuff. Mix it 1-to-1 by volume or 1 point something to 1 by weight. That foam expands a lot. I should have used it a lot more sparingly in some of these places, which you'll see a little later in the video. You can see that first one's already gotten higher than the ribs. I'll deal with that in a bit. You'll see it's not too difficult to deal with. Well, I say it's not too difficult to deal with now, but at the time I was kind of cussing it a little bit. So you can see I'm being a little bit more sparing with the foam that I'm pouring in at this point. That's what I was saying. It's not too difficult. It cuts pretty easy. Did have some foam grow up around the edge of that sole panel. Oh, in case anybody didn't get it or hasn't heard it already, the sole, S-O-L, is just a floor in a boat. It's like saying starboard and port instead of right and left. I guess saying that makes me feel all knowledgeable and wise and smart and whatnot. I'm working on the floor. I'll be adding more foam later, but this is all that's going in for right now. This is the foam that I want to have in before this sole goes down. You know, I saw that saw go flying over there when I was editing the video earlier, and it just occurs to me, I don't know where the other saw is. Oh, there it is. I see it up under that piece of plywood. Whew. I was having a panic moment there. I was afraid I might have just sealed a saw under the floor. I'm just cutting up the foam on the edge there that grew up past the level of that bottom deck. I managed to get every single one of those rivets in the hole that was drilled for it, although some of them dropped right in, and some of them I had to lever and pry and tap and whatnot, as you're seeing me do here. I found that the smaller hammer did a better job without causing the rivet I just put in next to it to jump out. I am so glad I got that pneumatic rivet gun. See, the first couple of those just went right in, a couple more just went right in. I know one of the guys cautioned me against these Chicago pneumatic rivet guns, but when I looked at the life of it, it'll probably last longer than I will. I think they said you have to service it after 10,000 rivets or something like that. You know, I've got this section titled as setting a gazillion rivets, but push comes to shove, I'm probably, I don't know, gonna wind up with about 200 rivets that are set this way. I've got solid rivets to go in some other places, but you know, the structure, the boxes, maybe 300 rivets, so it'll be a long time before I need to service this rivet gun. Oh, that is so much better.